We were approached by Lush at the end of 2013, and the problem they had, I mean, obviously, like in any design project, really, there's sort of a problem behind it, right, which you try to contribute and solve somehow with what you do. The problem was that they were rebranding and sort of refreshing their whole image in a bit of a more, from my point of view, in a bit of a more sort of neutral and contemporary way compared to the way they used to represent themselves in the past. So they wanted basically a tool that would allow them to set text in a way which was comparable to this sort of handwritten style which they use all over the place. And if you walk into any Lush shops, you would see, you know, these kind of handmade letters all over the place. So they wanted a typographic tool, therefore a typeface or a system of fonts which kind of convey the same message and the same mood. With Lush, actually, we were collaborating daily, really, and they provided us the samples which we have been using. So we would digitize their letters, obviously amend them heavily on screen, but the starting point would be, the design would be provided by them, really. So the challenge was to take handwriting and put it into a font. The Lush writing style is a rather informal hand, written in a rather fast and confident way. However, it retains a sort of blocky appearance, and it has this feature of being most often uppercase only, and the uppercases have a typographic rather than cursive construction. What I mean is that, you know, a letter N, for instance, rather than being written this way, will be written that way. We identified two main styles which the Lush sign writers use. One would be a slower style to be used at larger sizes with a tool of this sort, therefore like a chiseled tip, which would give some modulation between thick and thin strokes. The other one being a bit of a slower style to be used at smaller sizes, which is written in this kind of, with a tool of this kind of shape, which gives a more monolinear stroke. You know, working on a handwritten typeface is very different from what we usually do. Lesson number one, I would say, is that you end up actually completely forgetting about the ruler and the guidelines, which is what we usually, you know, worship in type design. So in this case, you need to do something which is very organic and very sort of irregular in alignments. Therefore, both in terms of vertical metrics, what we call the vertical metrics, therefore, you know, the baseline and the cap height, and in terms of the stem weight, you end up just trusting your eye, basically, which is something quite different from what we usually do, where we, you know, tend to measure all the elements, making sure that the system is working consistently. Kind of the main challenge here was to produce a number of alternates which look different enough. Therefore, you would play with kind of a different construction of your letter. But also you would play with the proportions. So you would have one alternate which is a bit wider, one alternate which is a little bit narrower, maybe one in between or something like that. You would play with the contrast. So for instance, in the case of the R, we have a bit of an irrational construction. So this part of the letter is actually thick here, thin here. The same stroke here is actually thin, and this one is thick. And here you have kind of a bit of a hybrid solution. So this is very free, and it's something that if you're working with a more formal and sort of regularized style of writing, then you couldn't do. But since this is such an informal style, we had the possibility to actually play a bit with the angle of the writing tool as well. Therefore getting very diverse appearance in the same letter. Another thing is that there are some letter shapes which are quite unusual in this typeface, but they are letter shapes that sort of carry the lushness. So they carry the value of the brand. So it's an important asset for them to have them in the font as they write them. Wherever you go in England, in whatever the shop, when you look at the price of the products on the label, on those plates which they have in the shop, the pound sign will always be written this way, which is a bit of an unusual construction for the pound sign. And the same goes for the G and for the Q. We wanted to retain that lushness, because it was, something important for their brand. All these aspects kind of evolved during the process. Really, we didn't have a clear idea of how we were going to do this. Also because again, it's a bit of an unusual project and quite a new thing for us. So it was very interesting and to see how the project took life as we progressed. But there was plenty of unplanned things, I would say, like these ones here. The way these fonts were going to be applied obviously played an important role in the design of the fonts, as it's always the case. In this specific case, we had to bear in mind a number of different applications since the beginning. On the one hand, the web, which was kind of the aspect from where the whole project, the idea of having this type system came from. Then we had these typical labels, plates, which are placed in the Lush shops all over. We had labels to be placed on the products, which are obviously quite an important thing as well. We had all sort of collateral printed materials like stickers or small envelopes. Lush Times, which is a magazine that Lush uses to sort of keep up to date their customers on what's going on. So all sort of different applications. I wouldn't say that this was a fast project. It did take quite a bit because again it's so different from what we usually do. We obviously have very established and sort of tested, very established workflows and ways of working and doing things. And a lot of the stuff which we usually use in terms of processes and workflows didn't really apply to this. So I think it was quite a laborious and long process. However, a lot of stuff which we developed in terms of tools, for instance, to produce this typeface, we will be able to reuse it for future projects which are somehow similar. So, script typefaces or typefaces that emulate handwriting and need alternates to be there and randomness to be there.